break. Sometimes they're even torn apart. That is the unfortunate and the heartbreaking truth. Relationships, hope, communities, trust, peace, sometimes they break, or they unravel, or they shatter completely. And when they do, it is often tragic. And yet, even then, amid the rubble and the ruin of what had been, there lies the possibility that out of those broken pieces, new life, a new creation, something different, and I dare say, something even better can emerge. The art of doing that, of recreating beauty from brokenness, that is a holy art. In Japan, it is called kintsugi. Kintsugi. Kintsugi artists take broken clay vessels and then they painstakingly, creatively, with an unwavering faith amid the brokenness, they believe that beauty is still possible. And so they reassemble those broken pieces. But often, those pieces don't fit back together exactly the way they did before. You see, going back to the way things were can sometimes be impossible. Being broken changes us. It changes clay pots too. Suddenly there are gaps here and there, some small, some large. Holes are left where some original pieces have gone missing altogether. Such matters, though, they do not discourage a kintsugi artist, for their goal is not to recreate exactly what had been before or hide the scars and the brokenness that have been endured. Instead, they honor those things. They claim those things. For it is exactly those things that give the new creation its beauty. Kintsugi artists fill the gaps. They fill the holes and the divide between pieces with a thick mixture of powdered clay, adhesive, and gold, adding and incorporating when it is necessary something completely different into the new whole. Pieces of other pots, stones, gems. That is how kintsugi gets its name. In Japanese, kintsugi means golden joining. Golden joining. On the picture, on your bulletin, there is a picture of a kintsugi vase. You can see there in that picture where the gold mixture fills the divides where the pieces were broken. And it holds them together even when they don't quite fit. In this piece, pictured on your cover of your bulletin, a blue stone has been joined in to become part of this vase, making it even more stunningly beautiful than it had been before. This past Wednesday was the 18th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. The town of Bay Harbor Island held a memorial event, as many communities do. They held it in conjunction with the Ruth K. Broad School. And one student was chosen to speak, our own Carolyn Bartroff. Her speech is what inspired the sermon this morning. It was extraordinary. It was wise. Carolyn, who was not even born when the attacks occurred, learned about the attacks by listening to the stories of others. She heard stories told of the shock and the devastation, the losses and the grief endured. But as people continued to tell their story, they began to tell the story about the days and the months after 9/11. Stories of how there seemed to be a kintsugi-like golden joining together in an unusual, almost impossible seeming unity. It was as if something golden had filled the divisions and the gaps between people, between neighbors, even between political adversaries, holding them together in a new way. It wasn't possible before. A new, more beautiful way. Now, to be sure, it's easy to over-romanticize this. It wasn't a perfect unity. There were those still left out. But still, nevertheless, for a period of time, it did seem as if there was a broad sense of community, of feeling that much more bound us than divided us. As such, for many, space was created in hearts once closed. Space enough in those hearts to incorporate those who had not previously been included within one circle of care. So from the brokenness and the pain, in many ways, something beautiful did emerge. Something life-affirming, something, again, not perfect, but oddly more whole than things were before everything broke. The new wholeness was more complete than the original perfection. Carolyn had us reflect on this kintsugi moment, this time in our country of golden joining, in our country and in our lives. And then she had us reflect on where we were that morning. 9/11, 2019, both as a country and as individuals. Are we willing, 18 years later, as individuals, as a community, as a country, to bind ourselves still to others, to neighbors, others who in some ways are different than us, but in many other ways are just like us, hurting, fearful, broken. It was an uncomfortable moment of reflection, because we just seem so terribly, irreparably divided. Carolyn went on, though, to remind me and everyone there of what I had forgotten. Maybe you had forgotten it too. The wholeness is possible. Still, even now, it is possible to overcome our differences, as large as they seem, to overcome our pain and all that we think make it impossible for us to come together. It is not. It is possible. It has happened before, 18 years ago, but for it to happen now, we must know, as a kintsugi artist does, that beauty begins only. Beauty only begins once we recognize that we are broken. Only when we are willing to lay ourselves back down on that potter's wheel, as it occurred in Jeremiah's vision. Only when we allow ourselves to be reshaped, recreated more according to God's holy vision. Creating a more beautiful whole only begins when we admit that we need each other. Only when we're willing to bind ourselves to others, to join the ways in which we are broken and imperfect with the ways that others are broken and imperfect. For that is where wholeness is created. That is what healing and peace are. They are not some kind of perfection achieved. They are a state of willingness to be joined together despite our differences, despite our pain and our hurt and our history. And when we cannot quite manage to do that on our own, the good news is we don't need to. For if we are willing, God's Spirit, like some kind of miraculous golden adhesive, can fill the gaps and the holes. It can soften the jagged edges between us that allows us to hold on to each other, making of us and all that more precious and beautiful whole. 9/11 memorials proclaim we must never forget. And it is true. We need to remember the loved ones lost. We need to remember the heroic acts of selflessness by bystanders and first responders. But as Carolyn reminded me, we must also never forget what is possible. That it is possible to create a more beautiful community, a more complete wholeness, if we are willing, if we have the courage and faith to forge it with the heart and the wisdom of a Kintsugi artist. May we have that courage and wisdom and faith today. Amen.